in an ethical manner, because you can get into really some dark shit when you go into those fish farms.
You can, and you can actually get. Well,
when
you
I
have
say
the
dark shit, I'm talking literally like dark shit that
and
they're
that's the
swimming
thing,
around in.
You can get more parasites. I think tend to come from farmed fish because they are isolated versus flowing.
In the long run, what's worse though? The plastic that could, potentially cause so many diseases, or a parasite that you go to the doctor, they give you medicine, they get rid of it. What's worse? I mean,
I know what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah,
most cases. I agree. Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, but because we're all in agreement, I'm just gonna play devil's advocate and say I'm pro trash in the ocean. So I actually I go out there, and sometimes I just throw whole bottles that I don't even drink. Like I just throw them in the water.
You're one of those.
Yeah. So no.
A message in a bottle.
Plastic. Yeah. MAGA. We have the best trash, let me tell you.
We're winning at trash disposal.
Oh yeah. Still don't know what I was waiting for, and my time was running wild, a million dead-end streets, and every time I thought I got it made, it seemed the taste was not so sweet. So I turned myself to face me, but I've never caught a glimpse how the others must see the faker. I'm much too fast to take that test. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't wanna be a richer man. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. It's gonna have to be a different man. Time may change me.
Welcome back to Undoctrinated. Thanks for staying with us after that horror show of an episode last week. Yeah, I'm not lying. That was maybe our worst episode. Through nobody's fault but mine.
It wasn't that bad.
If you happen to hear it, I don't blame you for turning it off early, as the sound quality was pretty bad. I don't know how to do a proper sound check, and I think my lack of knowledge on that subject really showed on the recording. So I'm going to try a few things and try and improve the sound quality of the episodes, like paying more closer attention and spending a little bit more time on my sound checks. It's a little difficult because we use 4 mics and 3 of them are different. So it's kind of hard to adjust the levels and get every mic to right to where I want it and get everybody to sound equally good. That's true, yeah. We had people sharing mics. I think me and Natalie were sharing. Val and Lindsey were sharing. I don't think you heard Val much on that episode, but she will be heard in this one. I think I made a good point of getting her involved on this one. So if you stuck with us through that and you're listening to this, thank you very much. I appreciate it. In addition to the sound quality issues, I am new at this, and I'm having a trouble finding a good balance between having a good conversation and being cognizant of the fact that I'm recording a podcast. So, for instance, I'll start out kind of nervous, trying to check everybody's the way everybody sounds, and then I'm not as involved in the conversation as I'd like to be. And then I get involved in finally I get into a flow of a conversation. And I think the quality of the podcast suffers because then I start doing things like not talking directly into the mic. So I'm also probably going to invest in some tabletop mic stands. I think that might help. And I did enjoy recording in the dining room. What did you think about that, Natalie?
I didn't mind it.
Yeah.
I tried to go like this one time when your mic was down low, but help you.
Right. And I think it was good. I thought we were going to get a lot more ambient sound in there, like the dog's nails on the tile, or luckily I don't think anybody turned the kitchen sink on because that probably would have come through pretty clear.
Yeah.
but actually everybody in the house at the time was sitting at the round table, which is what I like about it. I like the round table aspect of it. So I think I might continue trying to record in there, especially if I get those tabletop mic stands.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, that could be an ideal setting for our podcast. So the next episode we're gonna stick in there. Also, one other thing I'm having trouble with is expressing my thoughts while we're having our conversation. Like me and Nathan, we got into a little bit of a debate, and I don't think I did a very good job of putting my point of view out there for a number of reasons. One specific example was when we were talking about the action in Afghanistan. Obviously, I'm against it. I think it needs to end as soon as possible. Nathan brought up a point that you hear occasionally, not so much anymore, but you used to hear it a lot during like the second invasion of Iraq. That was fight them over there so you don't have to fight them over here. And like a bumbling idiot, I instantly attacked the safe haven myth, which is a totally different thing. So I brought up something totally off the subject after that, and just because my mind was clouded and I wasn't fully involved in the conversation. I normally I'd be reluctant to put out a rebuttal to somebody's point when they're not around to defend it, but I'm pretty confident that Nathan will probably hear this, and it's obviously an open door policy for him to come on the show, so he'll give his rebuttal to this next time he makes his appearance. But I think it's absurd to think that we would be invaded by a foreign army, so he must be talking about terrorist attacks.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So ever since the invasion of Afghanistan in late 2001, actually I don't think they actually sent. There wasn't a giant surge until 2002, but we had started bringing troops over there in 2001, and terrorist attacks have continued as the war in Afghanistan has continued. In fact, 800 terror cases have been prosecuted by the United States since 9/11.
Oh, wow.
Including, now I'm going to go over some of the terror attacks on U.S. soil here. 4th of July 2002, Hisham Muhammad Hadayat, an Egypt national with a green card, killed 2 people, wounded 4 at an El Al ticket counter in Los Angeles International Airport. Hadayat also died. The FBI later concluded that was an act of terrorism, of course. June 1st, 2009, Abdul Hakim Mujahid Muhammad, an American-born convert to Islam, opened fire on an Army recruiting office in Little Rock, Arkansas. Muhammad killed 1 soldier and wounded another. November 2009, Army Major Nidal Hassan opened fire in a soldier readiness processing center at Fort Hood, Texas. The American-born Hassan killed 13 fellow soldiers and wounded 32. Hassan was paralyzed in the attack. At his trial, he declared himself to be at war with America, and investigators found that although he acted alone, he had accessed jihadist websites. April 15th, 2013, this was the Boston Marathon bombing. Everybody pretty much remembers that horrific incident. July 16, 2005, Muhammad Yusuf Abdulaziz attacked both a Marine recruiting office and U.S. Navy center. He then drove to a Navy Reserve center where he killed 4 Marines and 1 seaman before police officers killed him. December 15th, 2015. This one was close to home, although I was on the other side of the country when this happened. A married couple, Syed Rizwan Farouk and Tashin Malik, opened fire on a Christmas party at the San Bernardino County Department of Public Health where Farouk worked. 14 people died and 24 were injured. June 12th, 2016, American-born Omar Mateen killed 49 people and wounded 58 at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. Another crazy mass shooting. Then October 13th, 2017, a man drove a rented pickup truck into cyclists and runners on the Hudson River bike path on Manhattan's Lower West Side, killing 8 people and injuring 11. So obviously we are still fighting them here. Also, there's been many more attacks in Europe, including London, Manchester, Barcelona, Paris, Stockholm, Berlin, Brussels, Hamburg, Normandy, Nice, just among others. Obviously, the Middle East has been plagued by terrorist attacks for the longest time. So I hardly consider it worth it to fight them over there if it's causing more terrorism domestically or anywhere else in the world. A 2011 report written by the Los Angeles office of the FBI determined that an increase in attacks against U.S. targets was due to, quote, a broadening U.S. military presence overseas. The last point I want to make on that subject: if we are fighting them over there so we don't have to fight them over here, why are we backing them in Libya, Yemen, and Syria? So if you haven't heard about that, definitely look into it. The United States have been funding and arming ISIS and Al-Qaeda proxies in those nations to, apparently fight people we don't like even more than that. It doesn't make much sense to me. All I can think of is that they're just trying to promote perpetual war. So more on that in future episodes. There was many other points I wish I could go back. I mean, just going back and listening to that episode was just a cringe fest for me personally. I'm pretty ashamed about the whole thing, but that's what these intros are for.
I wasn't very nice either.
You weren't very nice?
No.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. I felt like I had an attitude with my replies.
Maybe. Well, we'll both get better at this, so just stick with us. I think our worst moments are behind us, but that's what these intros are for, to explain ourselves on the previous episodes.
Yeah. Regardless, we still have a good message, so.
That's right. We mean well. Anyway, this episode was recorded last weekend, right after we recorded that. So you're going to hear some more of the same sound issues on this episode.
Yeah.
Basically, we sat down, had that conversation you heard in the last episode, and then we took a break, we saved the file, and everybody still wanted to talk, and I had more to talk about, so this is that we're going to put that out right now. And then, like I said, I'm working on the sound quality issues, so the next episode, I'm hoping, fuck it, I'm going to guarantee that it's going to sound better. So, stay tuned. Other than that, what you're about to hear is the same guest. Well, it's me and Natalie, and then our guest, Ryan, Val, Lindsey, and Nathan. And we talk about the environment and animal rights and kind of how that ties into government and government regulations and possible need for such things. So, thanks again for sticking with us, and enjoy the episode.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy.
I don't wanna lose your love tonight. I ain't got many friends left to talk to. The winds are up and I'm in trouble. You know I'd do anything for you. Stay the night but keep it undercover. I just wanna use your love tonight. shoulder to cry upon. I just wanna use your love tonight.
All right. This is from BBC News. Dead sperm whale found in Indonesia had ingested 6 kilograms of plastic. November 20th, 2018. Items found included 115 drinking cups, 4 plastic bottles, 25 plastic bags, and 2 flip-flops. The carcass of a 9.5-meter mammal was found in waters near Kapota Island in the Wakatobi National Park late on Monday. The discovery has caused consternation among environmentalists. Although we have not been able to deduce the cause of death, the facts that we see are truly awful. Dwi Suprati, sorry, I butchered that name, I'm sure. A marine species conservation coordinator at WWF Indonesia was quoted as saying by the Associated Press. It was not possible to say whether the plastic had caused the whale's death because of its advanced state of decay, she added. In a tweet, WWF Indonesia gave the breakdown of what was found inside the animal. That tweet is definitely not in English. Oh, here, they translate it. Hard plastic, 19 pieces, 140 grams. Plastic bottles, 4 pieces, 150 grams. Plastic bags, 25 pieces, 260 grams. Flip-flops, 2 pieces, 270 grams. Pieces of string, 3.26 kilograms. And plastic cups, 115 pieces, 750 grams. The use of throwaway plastic is a particular problem in some Southeast Asian countries, including Indonesia. 5 Asian nations, China, Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand, account for up to 60% of the plastic waste that ends up in the oceans, according to a 2015 report by environmental campaigner Ocean Conservancy and the McKinsey Center for Business and Environment. Plastic bags are believed to kill hundreds of marine animals there each year. In June, a pilot whale died off southern Thailand after swallowing 80 plastic bags. A report released earlier this year warned that the amount of plastic in the ocean could triple in a decade unless litter was curbed. At the end of the year, the UN said marine life was facing irreparable damage from the approximate 10 metric tons of plastic waste ending up in the oceans every year. Oh, damn, thank you, BBC, for that short article. But to what I wanted to say and why I wanted to read this article is because in a previous podcast with you, Ryan, actually the first time you came on, I talked a little bit about my what I consider utopian society and government's involvement in that society. And and I still believe that government should be extremely localized, not much money involved in government, and a whole lot less restrictions than we have now.
Agreed.
But some of the worries I have in that society are environmental concerns and animal rights concerns. And I feel this article does a good job of encompassing both of those things. You've got a dead sperm whale filled with ingested plastic. This is not like a isolated thing either. This happens all the time. They're finding species washed up on shores and plastic ingested in these species. They've got what do they call in the ocean currents? They've got like 6 different
The patches.
the plastic.
Specific patch ring.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they've got these giant where the currents come together in each ocean. They've got like giant patches of plastic.
Mm-hmm.
Bigger than Texas, I think, right?
Yeah.
The one off the
The
coast
Pacific.
between California and Hawaii,
The
it's bigger
Pacific
than the state of
plastic-
Texas.
Is that what it's
Patch ring,
called?
I think.
Pacific plastic patch?
No, I think it's the Pacific Patch Ring.
Whatever it is. It's giant. It's a giant area like the size of Texas.
Yeah.
And it's floating particles of plastic.
Mm-hmm.
They did a Vice special on this actually, and you should go watch it. It's like few hours long actually, but this team from Vice goes out on a boat into the Pacific Garbage Patch. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they go out there and they take samples of the water and they show it on the camera, and you can actually see all the plastic particles floating around in there. So that's kind of my concern with my utopian society is, will there be enough regulation on the environment? Will there be enough regulation for people that, like factory farming, the way we treat animals, there was some measure recently passed, I don't know if it was just California, that said you can't have your dogs out when the temperature falls below a certain level. Like, I'm all for that shit, but it pains me to say it almost because I hate government intervention, What do you think, Val?
I agree with that. I think the government needs to butt out of a lot of things that they put their nose into, but I think with like even the plastic bag law that we just passed, where you have to pay 10 cents for a bag, it seems like there's a lot less plastic bags on the side of the road anymore and stuff like that. So it seems like
I was all on board on that too.
Yeah, and it seems like in some cases maybe they don't do as much harm as we think they probably will do. So
Right. Overall, I think what we're doing today isn't making a great impact on the environment. Like, I think for the most part, our government is fucking up the environment more than they're saving it.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about the straw restrictions they have in California now? Like, where you can't give out a plastic or disposable straw in California unless requested at a restaurant.
I mean,
You
these
used
are
to work
just
at a restaurant,
yeah.
right?
I mean, I don't know. I think those are just small little things, but I don't.
Maybe they help. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, any little thing helps, I guess. But right now, currently, there's 2.41 million tons of trash out in the ocean right now, it says. So it seems like it's been going on probably for a while for there to be that much trash out there. So I think that whoever's in charge, government, or whoever, in making people more aware, or like, well, I don't know, ever since I was little, I would go to the beach all the time. My mom was like, don't leave trash, pick it up. It was just like, you don't litter the oceans. You don't leave your trash behind when you're going out camping or going out in nature. So I don't know. I would feel like, I think that each individual person would want to feel the same way, but I think that some people are just disconnected from that. And I see it all the time, people littering at the beach all the time. And they're just, I don't think they're just disconnected maybe with nature or animals, planet, I don't know.
Even if you're just walking on the streets in your neighborhood, like, and you see a, I don't know, Starburst wrapper or something on the ground, like, eventually that winds up in the ocean if you don't pick it up.
Yeah.
That's where it goes. And the currents take it to that one spot, not the one spot, but if you look at ocean currents, there's actually like 6 or 7 different zones where all this trash winds up.
Yeah, and how is the government supposed to be the one, to tell your kid to pick up their trash, or a human, or you or me to pick up your trash when you drop it on the floor? I think that comes down to just people. Like, I think people can control a lot of that trash, unless there's corporations that are taking boatloads of trash and dumping it out there. If that's not it, and it's literally from all of us just littering, then that's pretty pathetic. People out there.
And we should have some other resolution besides just, hey, you guys can't have this stuff as much as we used to give it to you.
Yeah.
There should be like plans that we're taking to go out there and actually fix this problem instead of just like, hey, no more straws.
Yeah.
There's got to be restaurants out there that are making like reusable straws now, right?
There's like metal ones. Yeah.
Or like paper.
I've had a milkshake before with a metal straw, I think.
I've heard that they're making water bottles that are like,
doesn't taste the same.
did you hear about those water droplet things? Those like weird, like, they're not plastic, but they're like made of this like weird material that they hold water. Remember, like, we were watching that on that documentary? It's like those bubble waters or something. And there's just like water in this liquid, like outside container, and you can just like.
It's a filter?
No, it's like instead of having your water in a bottle, it's just like in this biodegradable thing. You get it wet and it just opens up. Yeah, I forget what it's called, but we watched it on.
Fuck. That sounds interesting, but
documentary.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Getting rid of, they were like trying to say getting rid of water bottles. So it's just like a way to hold the water instead of a plastic water bottle.
Personally, I've actually gone towards the thermal flask, and I've kind of carried around my own personal water bottle that I fill up in the morning.
Yeah,
Same.
Yeah,
So
it's good to have
Every day.
it's making an impact.
Okay.
Like,
Come on, Valerie, you've got 2 water bottles here and a
Okay.
Dr. Pepper
to that point,
A lot of people use water
I think
bottles,
the answer lies a lot less in government restrictions than it does like just a global consciousness movement
Morale.
of people
Yes, people are
realizing
disconnected.
what the impact of disposable plastic is. You know, and buying a thermal flask or whatever this device you're talking about.
And the oceans are so important. I don't think people realize it too. Like how important they are.
Oh,
and
they're so
same
important.
with like food, like where we get a lot of food too. And you get rid of you kill the oceans and the food off there and the fish. You're gonna kill people.
The whole
Because
ecosystem
it'll
just
all be
collapses at that
all
point.
jacked up. Yeah.
Fish used to be like one of the most healthiest meats you can eat, and now it's like
They've got
you gotta
plastic.
watch out for mercury.
Mercury.
Well, and they have plastic too. They're saying that, like the beads from face wash, which I'm guilty of that because I have a face wash that I've used for years, and it does have those little bursting beads in it.
Exfoliating product.
Yeah, and so they're saying that those are washing down into the sinks and into your drains, and then going into the ocean, and then the fish eat them, and then you eat the fish.
And that's something not a lot of people are aware of at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. And not even just that, but it is, plastic from when you wash your clothes. There's things that are synthetic coming out of that are ending up in the ocean. So these fish that people are eating that, like you said, are supposed to be really good for you, they are contaminated. They have so much shit in them.
They're
at
like
this
this
point.
whale that are ingesting abnormal amounts of poison, basically.
Yeah.
Which is why you want to stay away from predatory fish because mercury compounds. So if a fish eats a fish, it's ingesting that mercury and so on and so on and so on. So if you eat a shark, you're eating considerable, or
like-
even large tuna.
We used
Yeah,
to
tuna's
frown
bad
upon
mercury.
like farm raised fish, but
It might be
like
better.
the most safest way to consume fish is actually from farm raised, but like in an ethical manner, because you can get into really some dark shit when you go into those fish farms.
You
But
can, and you can actually get. Well,
when
you
I
have
say
the
dark shit, I'm
yeah.
talking literally.
Yeah.
Like dark shit that
And
are
that's the
swimming
thing.
around in.
is you can get more parasites. I think tend to come from farmed fish because they are isolated versus flowing.
In the long run, what's worse though? The plastic that could, potentially cause so many diseases, or a parasite that you go to the doctor, they give you medicine, they get rid of it. What's worse? I mean, in
But yeah, no, I
most
know what you're
cases,
saying. Yeah,
you know.
most cases. I agree. Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. But because we're all in agreement, I'm just gonna play devil's advocate and say I'm pro trash in the ocean. So I actually
Thank
go.
you.
I
You're
go.
gonna use that as
I
a
go
house one
out
day,
there.
yeah.
And sometimes I just throw whole bottles that I don't even drink. Like I just throw them in the water.
You're one of those.
Yeah. So no.
Message in a bottle.
Plastic. Yeah. MAGA. We have the best trash, let me tell you.
We're winning at trash disposal.
Actually, we are. We are leading the world in and stuff like that.
Well, that is the real devil's advocate point I was going to make, is that 60% of that trash comes from Asia. And most of that's coming from
true.
Indonesia and China.
Yep.
It's actually it's actually an example of success in government that most of that trash isn't ours.
True.
And, a small percentage of that is coming from America, because you have a pretty liberal state that is leading the world on this type of legislation. Tim worries about it in his Utopian society, but this is an example of success in government. The ozone is not depleting anymore because we've made laws.
It's actually regreen.
Yeah,
We're kinda going
we
backwards,
we aren't putting the plastic in there that
it's
other
definitely
countries
getting worse.
are.
The fires,
No,
Yeah.
not necessarily the the
Hurricanes.
environment itself, but
All going downhill.
I mean, like with our current government system right now, they're reintroducing things like in Joshua Tree, they're bringing back fracking right outside of the park.
Sure,
That's
yeah.
something that's awful to the environment, and it's something that's being reintroduced as it's the new way and it's the best way to go. And that's not. It's ruining the environment, but our government supports it.
There's a
So
lot
we're
of
going
lobbying
backwards.
and shit that goes on that prevents like clean fuel from being implemented into travel.
And that's the real thing, is the corporate lobby. It's not so much that we're all using we're using water bottles because those are basically getting recycled. We're all living in California and probably through most of the country, I'd imagine. We're probably recycling most of that. What's really happening is corporations are lobbying so that they can dump toxic waste into the water, and then we can consume the fish that have been eating mercury and plastic and whatever else. So I mean, it's not the government regulation. It's the pollution of the corporate money on the government regulation. If anything, you need to cut out.
There's some corruption though going on too in government. You know that. Like, that wasn't there...
Humans are putting the trash in the ocean. Sorry. Humans are putting the trash in the ocean. People need to stop being pigs.
Yeah, but it's mostly
whether they're in Asia or wherever the fuck they are, they're still being trashy.
How do you stop them? How do you stop them from putting it in the oceans? Well, in California, we basically have. How have we done that?
Probably landfills, recycling.
Exactly. That's not in place in Asia.
Well,
So the answer
we
is
stopped.
government
Just so we're
regulation.
clear, we stopped ocean pollution. We've actually become one of the worst states in terms of air quality.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a 50-50 on
We've
that.
always been one of the worst states for air
there's
quality.
a lot
We've
of
exceeded. In fact, the smoke from the fires that just recently happened, they're actually found in New York City. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so we're actually polluting the whole country.
Yeah,
once
Well, I don't know if that
again.
counts
Well,
as pollution.
you know.
I mean, the forest fires are one thing,
Yeah.
but dumping toxic waste into the
Oh, I agree.
ocean. I mean, that's. I think it's corporate lobby money that allows a certain amount of toxic waste to be dumped into the water and a certain amount of plastic to be put in the landfill or in the ocean. That is more concerning to me than what an individual happens to be doing with their bottles, because we kind of have solved that problem in this country. Is we have good recycling programs. Those aren't in place in Asia, and the regulations to stop corporations from just doing whatever the fuck they want aren't in place. Our system's not perfect, but it's better than
Actually,
that.
Japan does a good job too. Japan actually
They just kill all the whales, but other than that, yeah.
Yes, but that said,
We don't know for sure that it was killed
It's
there.
for science.
Japan.
I don't mean with the plastic. They kill the whale and they eat it.
Yeah.
They
them
feed
in
a
Norway
lot
are
of
the-
people. They got a lot of people over there, Nate. They got
Well, the only ones that kill whales are the Norwegians and the Japanese. They kill almost all the whales that get killed. Everybody else.
Actually, I saw
Iceland
some on
kills
that
the
too.
whales.
But Japan, they're so how do you say, serious about making sure you recycle. From what I understand.
Oh yeah, they're crazy about
yeah,
it.
if
You gotta wash it all out and stuff.
Yeah, if you put even a plastic
Makes you
bottle in your trash can that is supposed to be recycled, they won't pick up your trash. And they don't, from what I understand, they don't have trash cans out everywhere like we do. You take your trash home with you.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting way of doing things.
Well,
and
culturally, they're a very neat, orderly type of people. That makes sense. But I mean, through the rest of Asia, they're very underdeveloped. Japan is very developed.
Yes,
I mean,
it's a difference. Yeah, it's a completely.
You go to Indonesia, it's not the same situation.
And India is by far probably the worst, really. If
There's
you,
like
People
this
are
whole
too bored. They don't know what to do with their trash.
this environmentalist movement is like the kind of the biggest subject that's like a first world problem, because like we look down upon these nations that are polluting the ocean with 60% of plastic, but these are developing nations that are doing the exact same thing that we did 40, 50 years ago, you know?
I think a couple things with that. One of the things is we've learned how serious that pollution is. For instance, we don't put asbestos in things anymore because we learned not to. This information's out there now, so places like Asia, India, those countries, there's no reason for them to continue. They can't claim ignorance because we've already learned what
The
detrimental
information is there
CFLs
now.
and ozone. Yeah. And so with that
That is much more sinister than what we did 40 or 50
yes,
years ago.
we did it out of
Fair
ignorance.
enough.
They're doing it in a completely different situation. What's great too is we were talking about how U.S. is actually leading. We left the the Paris Climate Accord or whatever, and everyone was all upset. Yet all the news came out right after that we're like none of the other nations are even close to us as how clean we are. So that's a kudos to America. The states that are closest to the ocean, so you got Washington, Oregon, California, Texas, so on and so on. Those are the ones that I think you really, as for a local, so America, they're really doing a good job of making sure this stuff doesn't end up in the ocean. I mean, it's kind of like you cut your nose off to spite your face with some of the other pollutants we have with traffic issues in California, everyone driving, so on and so on.
It's a major issue.
But that said, as we were talking, most of this pollution is coming from Asian culture. So, like you brought the straw thing. Well, straws only make, I think, 4% of all pollution in the world, from what I understand. It's almost negligible in one sense, and all it is really kind of comes to me as disingenuous, and it's coming. And the reason is a good example is they took a picture of this, and Starbucks was pushing the whole we're not doing the plastic straws. Here's a paper straw, but they wrapped it in plastic in a plastic package so you could give it So it's kind of like it's so disingenuous that it goes back to the bag thing. We know we have biodegradable materials that we could possibly be using, yet we still offer plastic bags. If we were really, really that concerned about plastic bags, just ban them all together. Except it seems like a money grab, 10 cents per bag.
Right.
Okay, same with straws. I mean, really, are we going to throw someone in jail for... I mean, that's what the law is written as. I think you could potentially be thrown into 1 year of jail for offering a straw without someone soliciting.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
The government mostly is they utilize force to implement their policy.
Well, that's what you have to do. What
Right,
other way
but
is
how
it?
far do you go?
You
That's
don't
the
throw
whole point
someone in
of
jail
it.
over a straw.
Yeah, exactly. Do you
That's
lock
very
somebody in a
extreme.
cage for using a plastic
No,
bag?
you
No,
And
you
not for
don't.
drugs
You
either.
don't. But questioning the idea that the government has the right to use force. That's basically what government is. It's the only
Yeah, give
people
them a
given the
ticket.
right to
Like,
use
give them
force.
Community service.
Okay.
They can
All
go
the
pick up
government can do
they
is
can go pick up
restrict your
straws
freedom.
on the freeway.
Okay.
Hey, you want to do some shit with straws? You go pick up straws for a month on the freeway. You go pick up trash. You don't throw them in jail.
I don't.
That's crazy.
Maybe that's right that you can be thrown in jail for a year. For
I think
using
it's
a
up to 1 year.
That sounds extreme to me.
Not
and I would
using it,
question
if
whether
they
that's
offer
They're
it
handing
to-
out fines or something for people like
It's
just
like
handing out
$1,000
straws
fine.
in restaurants.
Yeah.
That is the
If
way you
they
make
don't
change,
ask.
though.
Yes.
That is the way you make social
Okay,
change. In
wait,
the
wait.
70s, people littered all the time. It was just normal to litter. Now we look down on that. That's how you make social change.
I just want to bring up something since this is going to be aired a little bit further down. We were talking previously about culture in the Middle East. You're saying that we could change culture without government and war. Yet we're trying to implement changing culture here through governmental force. So that's kind of
You can change culture in many different ways, and you could pull a lot of different levers. But that is the lever that the government has. Is we've given them a monopoly on legal use of force. That's what the government is.
Agreed.
So, and it's up to, and you want to limit when they can use that force. Do we want them to use extreme force over plastic straws? No. The line needs to be drawn somewhere else.
Exactly.
We can agree on that.
Yeah.
But if you really do, say the plastic problem was a lot worse, and it was all California's fault. It was all our fault. There was a lot of plastic out there, and it was all our fault. Then maybe some extreme measure would be warranted, and maybe that would be supported. So really, it's just how much leniency you want to give the government, and how much force you want to be able to give them.
And
Brilliant. Thank you, Nathan.
yeah, that was great. And actually, to go back to what we were talking about, California is disingenuous, as we no longer allow straws to be handed out, but we hand out syringes that are also plastic, because we have a policy out here that they can have clean syringes, which actually contains, I think, more plastic than your average straw.
We need to make those out of
That's
something else.
that's a deep issue.
That's not to go that far off
let me
topic. That's
shift
just
gears.
to throw it out there.
Out of like biodegradable plastic or something, or like something. Yeah.
Well, there's probably a middle solution
Because
where you
we
can
can't
use
have
other
the
things.
AIDS
You don't need a
Perfect
fucking
either.
straw. All right? If you're using a straw, you're evil.
Well, last time I was at the
Sick
beach, I
son.
ran into a syringe before I saw a straw. So, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I mean,
And that's total. That's God. We could talk for hours about syringes.
yeah. No, they're everywhere.
I do want to shift gears a little bit. What do we do about factory farming? Is there an answer to that? Is
Yes,
it
lab meat.
is it
Next.
government
Thank you.
regulation or do we need or some sort of a cultural shift on like do we make everybody in the nation aware of what's going on on factory farms? You know,
So
but right now there's ad gag laws that don't allow you
True.
to report on what's actually going on those farms.
let's just start hunting humans, and we eliminate multiple problems.
Too many of those, anyway.
Yeah.
There is an article of a man that did have his foot amputated, and he did
Yes.
share it with his guests. They all sat down and had a foot for dinner, and it tastes just like carne asada. So I'm just letting you guys know, humans taste like carne asada.
I gotta get that recipe.
Okay?
Just the leg, though. Just
the
don't
leg,
know about
yeah.
the other parts.
I'm
You
sure
gotta
Actually,
slow
there was
cook
a
that
man-
shit.
the rest of the parts are probably much better.
There was a
And the
chef
tuck heel.
in Japan that cut off his private and served it for, I think it was like 10,000 a plate or something like that.
In Japan, that
worth
makes
it.
perfect sense.
I know, right? That doesn't seem strange coming out of
It's an
Japan.
aphrodisiac.
If you would have said any other country, I would have said no way.
Could you
You said
imagine if we
Japan, so-
started
I think it was
factory
Japan, yeah.
farming male testicles?
Oh,
man.
no. Population issue.
Sorry,
would be
human
really
testicles?
Curbed on that one.
I would like to see it pushed to go back to more fish. I think that the health benefits far outweigh any concern.
But we're
with
like
fish.
out fishing
We
what
are.
the oceans
Yeah.
can produce.
Now,
We are.
plastic or non-plastic fish, because
I know.
that's
Right.
where it
Maybe-
comes up
True.
where we're
Maybe-
overfishing, but also we're overfishing
True.
they've got plastic in them.
And
so I
that
think
also
we're kinda
involves
doing
more of a
things.
cultural shift as
Yes.
like far as giving up beef 4 nights a
Lab
week
meat.
for fish, you know.
I think you are seeing a
Lab-grown
shift
meat
in
is
the
the
first
answer.
world.
I think
And
you
yeah,
are.
like Natalie says, the lab-grown
lab
meat.
meat.
I think in the first world, in the developed world, I think this is going to shift. It is shifting.
Yeah.
It's not going to be. We're very conscious of it
Mm-hmm.
to a degree in the developed world. Where this is going to be a problem is they're eating more and more meat all the time in the developing world. China, India, Africa. They have a lot
The
of
trash
people,
polluter
and
people.
it's not. And it's
I'm just
not
kidding, you
developed.
guys. I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, a lot of these problems are
love
much
Asia.
easier. They're much.
Oh, no.
MAGA.
If we offend you, we still love you. It's just
Yes.
we're talking about you, trash, obviously.
Yeah.
These problems are more easily fixed in places that have money and development. It's not easily fixed
Yeah.
in places
That's
that don't.
Good point. And
That's
it's
a
just
great
like, yeah,
point.
just like you said with the plastic issue. It's like you have developing nations that are going through the same thing we went through 50 years ago. But there's like willful ignorance, like
Yep.
you said. You know, there's information now that they can go on that makes it a little bit more.
Too. It's not. It costs more money to develop the infrastructure to go clean and to not use all this stuff. It's cheaper to dump your trash in the ocean than it is to dispose of it properly. So there's a huge profit motive here where we're rich enough here to forego a little bit of profit for the sake of all of our clean air,
True.
all of our clean oceans. We push a little bit of the profit motive aside. That doesn't necessarily happen in every country in the world where you're willing to forego some profit to do the right thing.
I don't like when it comes to pollution of the oceans. I don't think it's so much an issue of the way you dispose of trash as it is use plastic and other disposable items. You know, like you can bury all the trash you want, and it's still maybe not the necessary course to take.
Well, where do
for
you put
trash
your
disposal.
plastic?
That's the thing. Like plastic is something that should culturally be looked at as something that's not sustainable.
I agree
to
with
use,
that.
You know?
For-
Like, and you can have all the landfills you want that prevent it from going into the ocean, but that's not necessarily a benefit.
But you don't
to
put
the
your
environment
plastic
as
in a
whole.
landfill. You put yours
Somebody
in the
else does.
recycling bin.
Well, you have to you kind of rely on third parties to do that for you, and even if it does get recycled, there's a lot of shadiness to the whole recycling industry also.
We send it to China.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. That's what we
We
used
do.
to do, and they stopped accepting it. We used to send a lot of our recyclables to China, and then they would turn it into a pulp, which then would get turned around and made into products. They stopped accepting some of our plastic, and I saw, I think it was Vice, but maybe it was somebody else, showing that we have like a back jam of plastic because China stopped
I
accepting
think
some
the
of our plastic.
solution lies in cognitive awareness that every time you throw plastic away, never to be used again by yourself, that it's a detriment to the environment.
Right. Well, I mean, it's
Whether
also
you're recycling that or not.
It's also a
whether
petroleum
you're throwing it in
problem.
the gray container or the black container.
Right.
It's an issue.
I agree with that, but most likely your plastic doesn't end up in the ocean. But somebody who's living in rural Indonesia, there's a much higher chance that their plastic that they threw away ends up in the ocean. So that's because of economic and governmental structure that we have surrounding us that they just don't have there. So the answer is more economic development.
For ocean pollution, yeah.
Well, for any kind of pollution, is it easier to get away with dumping toxic waste in the ocean if you're a company in China than it is here? I would assume yes. So, I mean, we can talk about our own governmental corruption, and I'd agree with you, but it's probably easier.
What about a free market solution to that problem?
I think you're
seeing
seeing that.
Let's say there's no Chinese government, there's no United States government. You know, do you have private organizations that step up to the plate and pay you for your plastic?
Yeah, and you're seeing that. They just started cleaning the garbage patch with some guy's new invention that's scooping shit up, and then they're going to try to... But that may not make money. His little project there is more of a passion project than it's something that's probably going to make money. Now, maybe he's able to make it a profitable business, but... You know, I don't know that people really want that plastic. It's in the ocean. Yeah. But in the first world, we're able to support people like that to clean that shit up. Now, I don't think they're putting a lot of effort into that in Indonesia. You know, I'm not up to date on Indonesian politics, but I have the feeling they're worried about some other things that we might have figured out a while ago because we're all pretty economically secure. And
well, when it comes to Indonesia, that's where all the cigarette butts in the ocean are.
Well, I mean, you could say you could trade that for Bangladesh or India or Vietnam. It's very populated in that part of the world. And 50 years ago, when we didn't have plastic is fairly new, you know, so they have some form of modern technology really when they're in an economic state that we were a long time ago. We were in that economic state a while ago, but they have plastic when we didn't, you know, and now that we're at this point, we're recycling most of our plastic, we're at least throwing it away, and that may not be happening everywhere. And beyond that, I mean, it's probably easier to dump toxic waste in the ocean. It's probably, you know, and that is why I push back on some of your anarchist views, because you do need some
That's what this whole conversation is about.
Here we go.
Right.
Ding, ding, ding.
So that's why I mean, that's, you know, it's funny. I listened to that first podcast we did, and I felt like such an asshole after I listened to it because I felt like I was just like so eager to jump on you at points, but we know each other so well. I'm like, I pretty much know where we're gonna disagree here, you know. But we have a good talk.
Yeah.
I think one of the key points is taking the politics out of being environmentally friendly. There's no reason for politics. As a conservative, it's probably one of the few things that actually bugs me about the party is their denial of, or the usual claim that they deny any kind of global warming, any kind of threat to our oceans and stuff. It bugs me because I think we see it on a daily basis.
That's even a conservative issue.
I don't. I think it's beyond politics. It needs to be a world issue. It doesn't. That's something that's got to transcend boundaries
Global
and borders.
Right, your assessment of the facts.
Yeah.
Your assessment of the facts on that front shouldn't have anything to do with political affiliation. It's like a scientific, factual question. It doesn't have anything to do with that. So it's confusing to me.
I want to go around the table. I want to start with you, Lindsay. A percentage of the people you know would you say don't give a fuck about animals?
Don't give a fuck about animals? You mean like in what way? Like the whales or their pets
like
at home?
They're willing to see torture of animals so they can get a cheap steak.
No, a lot of the people that I hang out with are vegetarians or they buy, grass-fed food, whatever. So no, a lot of the people that I associate with are aware of what products they're buying, what they're putting in their body. So I'll go out and buy chicken that's cheaper from one place than another because that's just my budget. So I'm probably the asshole that my friends hang out with that really thinks of that stuff.
I think there's a lot of people that aren't even living on a budget that still look for a cheap steak, and don't give a fuck where it came from. And there's some noble people out there that are rich enough to go on hunting excursions and gather all their meat, humanely. But what's your answer to that question, Val? Do you think could you put a percentage on the people that you know that don't give a fuck about animals?
I would say probably most of the people I know. When I'm looking at steak or anything like that, I'm usually looking for the best deal, and I know there's videos out there that turn people into vegans and vegetarians, and I stay away from that because for me, I guess ignorance is
And I'd hate
bliss.
to draw a correlation between people looking for a cheap steak to people that don't give a fuck about
Well,
animals.
no, I know, but I know what you
Yeah,
mean.
exactly.
I know what you
and I'm
mean.
not saying
I know
you're saying
it's-
that either.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, it's just,
It's
you know.
one of those things that falls into that category, though. If
Yeah.
you're looking to buy something cheaper, not really thinking of the aspect of how is the animal treated, or what impact is being done to the environment to get that cheap steak. Like, there's definitely the two ends of the spectrum that tie in together. So, I mean, before this conversation, that's not something that I really thought about. It was like, all right, like I know on the label it says that it's, raised free-range chicken, and so those are the things that I look at. Last thing on my mind was, how is this animal treated? I've seen things on TV or on Netflix where it shows animals being abused, but I think that can happen anywhere. I think, there's those spy cameras that go in there and see, like, oh, like, check out this factory and look at what they're doing. They're throwing their pigs across the hall, and so it could happen anywhere. You could buy a piece of meat that's $20 and it's in the same factory of another piece of meat that's $5, and they're both being treated the same way, but they're labeled differently. So, and I think that's what those underground teams are for, to expose.
Free market, which I love and trust so much.
Yeah.
It's like, to what extent are they trying to just make an extra buck off the price of some, defenseless cow?
Yeah.
Or pig or chicken?
Yeah. Well, and the labels only mean so much. The FDA, they put labels on it so you can sell it at a higher price. The regulations in themselves only go to a certain extent.
There's a lot of government corruption.
There is. So they can put that on the label, but what does it really mean? Because if you try to get that information from the government or from the FDA, they hang up the phone. They don't want to give you those kind of information because it goes against anything that they've labeled.
Yeah. And, see how they're I don't know, like Primal Pastures, that farm in Temecula.
I was gonna bring that up.
Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive, but you go to the farm. You could see the animals. You could see how they live. You could see how they kill them. You could see everything. It's not a factory, but
behind closed doors, when people aren't there, though, how do you really know if there's not that one asshole guy who works there, who's doing something to them, who's treating them the same way they are in a factory?
But overall, they're not living in a small box their whole life. They're able to roam on a farm. Yeah. That right there is...
To her point, those are the ones you see, not the ones that are behind. I mean, there's no real I'm just jumping in.
Yeah. They do on the tours, though, but if you go down there, you can, just go and look, but you can't, I don't think we can just go walk onto a giant factory farm and hang out all day.
Exactly.
So, I did want to bring that up. In my personal life, I've grown an affinity for pigs, and I chose to stop eating tortured pig. That's the way I put it. And actually, that's not entirely correct, because I still eat tortured pig. I just don't buy tortured pig. So your dollar speaks loudly on the free market. If you stop supporting something with your money, generally that can lead to a cultural shift. I've stopped supporting the torture of pigs, and I know I still support the torture of a lot of other animals, but I like pigs more than other animals.
Pigs seem more like dogs. They seem way more smarter than a cow. They just seem, they're more like little dogs.
That's the thing. I think it has to. There is some relationship between how smart or mentally, developed something is, and how aware they are of their own suffering, and how bad you're going to feel for it. So I don't know. I mean, if is the right word, I agree with you that pigs probably have the highest capacity to suffer of all the animals that we eat.
Their suffering is more relatable to our suffering, I think.
Well, Nate thinks that fish don't have feelings, so I don't know.
It's true. Kurt Cobain said so.
He said it.
Who said so?
Kurt Cobain.
Their neurology is different. They don't have as much of a developed brain. A pig's brain is very close to your brain. A fish's brain is not.
Yeah,
it's a lot different.
There's been some of that illegally released footage of factory farm pigs, and I have a feeling cows are the same way, but I choose not to look at that.
Don't. It's awful.
But
is awful.
if you look at these videos of pigs being slaughtered, it's heart-wrenching. They're suffering, and when you take one of their own, they grieve for their own. They would probably, they probably have funerals in their own way. They don't bury their dead, but they
It's like
mourn
eating a
their
dolphin.
dead like we do.
Yeah.
It's like a dolphin, or a whale. Like you just, it seems like based on their, their compassion for their fellow whale or pig or whatever, that they're, very aware of their suffering.
Yeah, they're very aware of what's going on. So to that point, and I did want to expand on that a little bit, instead of just buying bacon off the shelf like I used to, there's a farm, and that's where I buy all my pork. It's called Primal Pastures in Temecula, and they paid me for this spot. Thank you guys for being involved.
There you go. You're good.
Just kidding.
I want some free bacon.
It's a local farm, and they have a website. They introduce you to all their animals. They have tours of the facilities. You can meet all the animals in person.
On them. They're the cows' udders aren't
Right.
bleeding pus all over the place because they're not treated bad.
Most importantly,
Maybe they are, but you would think that they would be all scarred up and nasty if they were treated bad.
Chances are they're not.
Yeah.
Most-
You would see it when you go there.
No, most importantly, their meat is seasonal. Like, they only have a certain amount of
Yeah.
pigs that they take care of because they take care of them. And you can only buy bacon a certain time of the year. And you can only buy, once they run out of bacon, that's all the bacon they have until they raise more pigs.
That's really cool, actually.
Well, the answer is, we can all agree that aspects of factory farming are a horror show. The answer is some aspect of the free market. You got to pull the lever of the free market, which you do, and actually more and more people are becoming aware of this, and the free market is having an effect. Plus the lever of government. There are regulations in place on how animals have to be treated, and those regulations can be changed. They could be made to be more extreme as time goes on. It could, you could mandate through government that farms have to look more like that farm. If it's that important to the country as a whole, animal rights, you could do that. Now, we haven't decided that that's that important. We've decided that $1.50 cheeseburgers are more important than that. So you have to have a cultural shift, and then once you have a cultural shift of the people, you can pull the lever of the free market and the government, and that's how problems need to be solved. But both of those things are slow. It doesn't happen.
Well, when you implement things like ad-gag laws, it definitely slows that process.
Sure, and you get down to corporate lobby money. Again, like a corporate lobby money is one of the things in government that really throws off the equation, because you get somebody with potentially minority support but with a lot of money behind it that gets pushed through government or fought through government to keep down in terms of some sort of regulation, because there's a lot of money behind it. And that's really the problem, is trying to get corporate lobby money out of government, because it throws things off from the will of the people. Maybe the people want certain regulations, but if a certain lobby doesn't want it, it becomes hard to do. Now, at a certain point, the dam breaks, and even the lobby can't keep it back. There's lobbies trying to keep back, legal weed or whatever the next social issue happens to be. But eventually, the popularity becomes so great that the dam breaks, and even that can't hold it back. But it's really the corporate lobby money that is the danger to it all.
I think, and I do want to wrap this up. In order to make a free market work, you got to educate the people. You got to let them know what's going on on the factory farms that they're buying meat from. And if there's corruption in government, you have to behead those officials in front of everybody if they're corrupt.
I'm okay with most of
You got to
that.
make it unknown to everybody that corruption will not be tolerated.
People have to eat, People got to eat. They got to feed their kids.
Yep.
So, and not everybody can afford to go to the farm and pick out their meat, and they still have to eat. So, that's why hopefully
Those
we can get
people
the
should be
lab
forced to torture the animals themselves.
How do you tell poor people that they're gonna have to spend
Exactly.
extra money per month that they don't have,
Yep.
so
not
that
gonna work.
animals can't suffer? That's why it's
lab meat.
it's a first world problem. We get to worry
Yep.
about this stuff in the first world. It becomes harder when you are poor.
Stop throwing your cigarette butts into the ocean, Indonesia. Okay.
Yeah, Indonesia, what the heck? Get with it.
All right. Thank you, guys. All right, and that was the episode. I got a question for you, Natalie. Into the microphone. This is gonna sound terrible.
Well, hand it to me. What's that?
How do you think the world is gonna end?
An asteroid's gonna come, blow us all to bits, or the sun's gonna explode because it's the star.
Yeah, I think the asteroid is more likely. I mean, the sun is going to explode, but I think the asteroid is gonna impact the Earth in a cataclysmic way, much more, much sooner than the sun explodes. And if you factor in any possible way that humanity as we know it,
In our lifetime, though, I don't think so.
yeah, that's unlikely, but you never know.
No, yeah, you never know.
Well, what do you think about the chances of the supervolcano or of a supervolcano blowing up part of the world and ending life as we know it?
Like that big one over in Yosemite or something?
I think it's in.
Yeah, that's rough. I say we move like to Denmark or something. What's gonna happen?
We probably still won't be saved.
And we're all doomed when that happens.
Well,
They plug those things up, put like a giant cork in them, let them blow out from the bottom and just back into the earth.
it's not an anal cavity, Natalie. Anyway, thanks for listening. Email us undoctrinatedpodcast@gmail.com. Send us a tweet at undoctrinated1.
Number one. And Instagram, Undoctrinated Podcast.
All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. We got a lot of great shit planned, so stay tuned.
Goodbye.